cavernous hall gleamed with golden splendor, its walls shimmering with silk tapestries, and the faint scent of amber incense hanging heavy in the air. At the center of this opulence stood the Billionaire Sheikh, an imposing figure wrapped in midnight silks, his eyes cold as the desert night outside his towering palace. Power radiated from him, a man used to bending the world to his will. But today, something unsettled the usual rhythm of his flawless command. Outside, the scorching sun burned over endless dunes, and the modern emirate pulsed with life, where gleaming skyscrapers met ancient traditions, and the contrast of wealth and struggle roamed like desert winds. But within these gilded walls, the Sheikh's world was one of absolute control, a fortress of riches and unyielding pride. Beneath his polished demeanor, a shadow lingered, a loneliness etched deep in his gaze, masked by the glint of precious rings that adorned his fingers. His footsteps echoed through the silent corridor as he passed portraits of ancestors who ruled with iron fist and unbreakable will. Then, a sudden commotion near the grand kitchen doors shattered the stillness. A delicate but ragged figure hesitated at the threshold, her clothes tattered, skin browned by relentless sun, eyes blazing with vulnerable courage. The homeless girl, desperate and hungry, dared to approach the mighty Sheikh's domain. Clutching a filthy shawl, she whispered, "Can I have your leftovers, please?" The Sheikh's breath caught, a collision of worlds in a single moment. His lips curled into a disdainful smirk, voice sharp as desert thorns. "Begone. This palace is not your refuge." Her gaze met his unflinching despite the danger in his tone. "I have nothing, my lord, just mercy, if you can spare any." The bitter silence fell. The rich scent of saffron and rosewater mingled with the harsh smell of dust clinging to her skin. She was a stark contradiction to the extravagance surrounding them, fragile, yet unyielding. The Sheikh turned away, denying the gnawing pity that crept beneath his pride. But as he moved, a sudden decree arrived from the palace steward. A scandal threatened the family honor, requiring a public union to solidify alliances. And in a twist steeped in necessity more than sentiment, the girl's presence in the court stirred whispers of an unexpected bride. His frozen world trembled at the edge of upheaval. Suddenly, the Sheikh faced a choice: dismiss her to the shadows from which she came, or bind her to this life of power he hardly understood. The girl's plea, simple yet profound, pulled at unseen threads within him. A grudging acceptance, cloaked in reluctant dignity, sealed their fates. The ornate gates closed behind her, the desert winds humming secrets no gold could silence. Before the next secret of this majestic kingdom unfolds, make sure you've joined our caravan of unforgettable stories. Many destinies remain to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this Billionaire Sheikh has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, where are you following this saga from, and what twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to continue. Thank you for being with us. The silence that followed the decree was heavier than the desert night outside. The Billionaire Sheikh's gaze, once cold and unyielding, flickered with a tension few had ever glimpsed. The grand hall, bathed in golden light and swathed in the scent of amber and rosewater, suddenly felt smaller, an exquisite cage tightening around him, and the fragile girl who dared to cross his threshold. She stood there, a stark contrast to the shimmer of wealth around her, dirt-smudged hands clutching the worn shawl, eyes carrying an untold story of survival and silent rebellion. Her courage, raw and unvarnished, unsettled even the steely veins of the Sheikh. "Your presence in this palace is as unusual as the desert blooming in winter," he said, his voice a chiaroscuro of command and something barely concealed beneath, the faintest note of curiosity that threatened to betray his decades of practiced detachment. She met his eyes steadily. "If I am to become the unexpected, then may I know what fate awaits the girl who once begged for crumbs beneath your doors?" The words hung between them like a fragile thread pulled taut, ready to snap. He paced slowly, the soft rustle of his silks brushing against the marble floor like whispered secrets. In the recesses of the palace, the court murmured rumors, and the steward's urgent summons had already stirred unease among the nobles. A public alliance was no mere formality. It was survival. And she, the ragged stranger with dust in her hair, was suddenly woven into the tapestry of his destiny. "The decision is not mine alone," he admitted, voice dropping to a gravelly murmur. "But this union, whether you want it or not, will mark the turning of tides. Do you comprehend what it means to walk from shadow into fire?" Her jaw tightened, defiance sparking like a flame. "It means embracing the impossible, and I will not falter even if my soul trembles." The Sheikh's eyes softened imperceptibly before hardening again. "Then you shall learn the rules of my world." Without ceremony, guards appeared to escort her through a labyrinth of corridors, their faces masks of indifference, but the glances they exchanged spoke volumes of the irreconcilable worlds about to collide. In the chambers, where moonlight carved silver patterns across the silk-draped walls, the girl lingered, her breath shallow, heart pounding, against ribs that once ached from hunger and cold. She was no stranger to hardship, but here, the opulence, the whispered plots, the looming presence of the billionaire Sheikh. Every moment was a test of her fragile resolve. Suddenly, the palace steward's urgent knock shattered the quiet. The Sheikh returned, his expression unreadable. "News has arrived," he said, voice steady, but with an edge of urgency. "An ally once thought loyal, now plots against us. Our enemies grow bold, and within the whispers, a danger festers that could undo all we have built." The girl's eyes darkened with the weight of new uncertainty. "And I, what role am I to play in this storm?" He stepped closer, the scent of oud and musk enveloping her senses. "You are no longer merely a shadow at the gate. You are the symbol of hope or ruin. Your secret, the one you guard fiercely, holds power far beyond what you understand." Her breath caught. The thought of her hidden past, a secret so dangerous it could topple empires, felt like a noose tightening with every heartbeat. "Why tell me this now?" she whispered. "Because in this palace, loyalty is currency, and trust is rarer than the stars in the desert sky." The hours that followed were a blur of whispered conversations, furtive glances from unseen eyes, and the slow, torturous unraveling of her place in this gilded web. The Sheikh watched her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The predator, sizing its prey, or perhaps something far more complex. Later, beneath the grand chandelier that spilled crystalline light like fragmented dreams, the two found themselves alone. "Tomorrow, you will meet the council," he said. "They will judge you not by your words, but by your silence and your secrets. Are you prepared for the burden?" She swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter, yet oddly thrilling. "I am no stranger to judgment." He allowed himself an almost imperceptible smile, a crack in the fortress of his indifference. "We will see then." Just as the silence settled again, a sudden cry echoed through the palace. A messenger, breathless and bloodied, staggering into the hall. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, every muscle coiling like strands of steel. "They've struck at the outer caravans." The man gasped. "Supplies are seized and hostages taken." The gravity of the news pulled the room into a stillness so profound it was as if time itself held its breath. The girl watched the Sheikh's features harden, the weight of leadership etching itself deeper into his face. Yet for the first time, in the shadows behind his resolute exterior, a flicker of vulnerability passed, an echo of the loneliness he so fiercely concealed. Her secret, his empire, the enemy lurking both within and beyond the palace walls. Everything was unraveling, faster and more recklessly than either could have foreseen. And as the golden gates groaned shut behind them, sealing the fate of two souls bound by necessity and chance, the Sheikh's voice cut through the charged air, low, fierce, and unyielding. "Trust no one, not even those who wear smiles. The world outside may have been a desert of shifting sands, but inside these walls, a storm was gathering, a tempest that would test every promise, every secret, and every heartbeat." The tension in the grand hall tightened with every passing second. Outside, the desert wind howled faintly, but inside the gilded chamber, the atmosphere was suffocating, thick with secrets and unspoken threats. The billionaire Sheikh stood rigid, a silent sentinel amid the swirling uncertainty of his empire. His gaze searched the horizon of opulence, yet all he found was the shadow of betrayal creeping ever closer. The girl, once merely a ragged figure begging at the gates, now stood transformed, her posture defiant beneath silks heavier than the burdens she carried. Her eyes held fire, tempered by exhaustion, and a secret locked beneath layers of whispered pain. Despite the grandeur surrounding her, she felt vulnerable, as if each glittering crystal chandelier was a spotlight, exposing every flaw she had struggled to conceal. "There are eyes upon you that do not blink," the Sheikh warned, his voice low and weighted with authority. "Eyes hungry for weakness, for the fall of this house. Do not give them cause." She met his gaze squarely, surprising him with her steady resolve. "Then I will learn to guard what little I have left, no matter the cost." He saw the flicker of something familiar in her stance, an echo of battles fought, scars endured. It stirred a reluctant respect in him, mingling awkwardly with the duty that demanded she remain. Nothing more than a pawn in a game of power. The palace steward approached, his footsteps hurried, yet measured. "My lord, the council awaits your presence." They grow restless with the growing threats. With a curt nod, the sheikh turned, gesturing for the girl to follow. A procession of courtiers and guards framed their path, whispers trailing in their wake like venomous serpents. The girl felt the weight of every gaze, every whispered doubt, painting her as unworthy, an intruder, tearing at the fabric of tradition. Once within the vaulted chamber, where council members sat shrouded in shadow and silk, the air shifted. The atmosphere was charged. Every breath heavy with anticipation and calculation. The bitter wind of politics howled louder than any desert storm. The sheikh took his place at the head, regal and unyielding. He did not introduce the girl. She was an unspoken declaration, a twist none had predicted, and none dared challenge outright. His eyes fixed on the council, but behind the facade, he fought an internal battle. Loyalty versus survival, pride versus necessity. One voice pierced the chamber, a sharp, venomous tone laced with suspicion. How can we trust the stranger brought from the streets? Is she not a blot upon the dignity of our lineage? Others murmured agreement, their disdain palpable. The girl remained silent, her face composed, but her heart pounding like desert thunder. The sheikh's voice cut through the murmurs like a drawn scimitar. This is no mere stranger. Her arrival is a necessity forged by forces beyond our control. She bears a secret that could unravel or unite us all. The room stirred uneasily. The girl's secret, a perilous shadow lurking beneath her composed exterior, hung unspoken but felt by all. A stern councilman leaned forward, eyes narrowed. And what claim does she hold upon this house? On you, Sheikh. Before the sheikh could respond, the girl stepped forward, her voice steady but laced with defiance. I am no pawn, nor am I the helpless girl who begged for crumbs at your gates. I carry truths that could topple kingdoms or save them. But I will not be silenced or shamed. A ripple of shock swept through the assembly. The sheikh's mouth twitched imperceptibly, a flicker of pride hidden beneath carefully guarded layers. The session stretched late into the evening, a labyrinth of veiled threats and fragile alliances. Threats whispered like desert snakes, promises coated with honey and danger. But beneath it all, the unspoken question loomed. Could power, forged in gold, withstand the fires of betrayal and love? Afterwards, in the quiet sanctuary of his private chambers, the sheikh withdrew. The weight of leadership pressed down like the unyielding sun above the sands. He paced slowly, hands clenched, mind racing through possibilities and dangers. The girl watched him from the shadows, sensing the storm within. Beneath his mask of steel, there was a man wrestling ghosts of his past, ghosts he would never admit aloud. For all his wealth and command, loneliness clung to him like a second skin. Breaking the silence, she spoke softly. Your world is ruthless, my lord. But so is mine. I have survived deserts sharper than blades and nights colder than these walls. I do not fear what awaits. He finally looked at her, eyes dark and unreadable. And yet, survival is not enough. You will have to choose between the shadows that comfort you and the flames that could consume us both. Her breath hitched at the threat and the promise intertwined in his words. The gulf between them, of status, of power, of secrets, seemed vast. Yet beneath it all, an unspoken thread connected them, fragile but real. Suddenly, the echo of hurried footsteps shattered their fragile truce. A breathless messenger burst through the corridors, dust trailing his cloak like a wake of dread. The caravans transporting vital supplies have been attacked, he gasped. Hostages taken. The enemies grow bold, pressing closer than ever. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, resolve igniting in his gaze. Prepare the defenses, and guard your secrets well, because in this war, the greatest peril comes from within. The girl's eyes met his, unwavering, fierce. Let the desert winds carry our promise. Whatever storm approaches, we will face it as one. And as the golden gates closed behind them once again, sealing the palace in an embrace of looming war and whispered secrets, the darkness beyond seemed to hum with a new threat, one neither of them could yet see, but one that would shatter every certainty they held. In the deepening night, a shadow moved unseen, a whispered name on the lips of traitors, the name that would bring ruin or redemption. And the Sheikhs, world and heart, hung trembling on the fragile edge of that secret. The moon hung low over the emirate, casting a pale silver glow through the high windows of the palace. Inside, the golden hall where fortunes had been made and broken felt colder than ever. The tension between them stretched taut, invisible as a thread about to snap at the slightest touch. The billionaire sheikh stood by the broad terrace, gazing out toward the endless dunes. His profile etched sharp against the night sky. His usually imperious expression was shadowed with unrest, a rare crack showing in the armor of his pride. Behind him, the girl's footsteps were soft but sure as she crossed the polished floor, silk whispering around her like a second skin. I heard the news, she said, voice steady but low. The caravans attacked, supplies stolen, hostages taken. Her eyes met his, unflinching, fierce. This war you warned of, it's already at our doorstep. He did not answer immediately. Instead, his fingers clenched around the cool marble railing, knuckles white beneath the shadow of ornate rings. The scents of oud and jasmine filled the space, heavy and intoxicating. But they did nothing to soften the sharp edge of the moment. Danger has many faces, he finally said, voice gravelly. And we have enemies who wear false smiles. He turned to face her fully, a titan cloaked in silk, yet the loneliness that lurked in his eyes was unmistakable. You stand beside me now. This is not a mere alliance of necessity. It is a bond forged by fire. The girl inclined her chin, swallowing a swell of fear that bitterly sought to claw its way to the surface. I am no stranger to fire, my lord, but neither am I willing to be consumed by it. For a heartbeat, the world outside faded. The harsh desert winds, the whispers in shadowed corridors, the plotting voices of the council. All that remained was the electric charge between them, a promise, a challenge, a fragile hope. The council grows restless, he murmured. They doubt you. They will watch every word, every glance. How you carry yourself will decide their final judgment. She met his gaze without faltering. Then I will show them the strength that hunger and hardship have carved into me. I have survived the storm before. I will survive their scrutiny as well. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. It was not warmth, not yet, but something more. An acknowledgement of an ember glowing beneath the cold ash. Good. You will need every ounce of strength. There are secrets I have kept, truths that could shatter this house, and you must be ready to face them. Her breath caught. The weight of his words pressed heavily on her chest, reminding her of the forbidden past she guarded with silent tenacity. That secret was no longer hers alone. It was woven tightly into the fate of this gilded cage. Suddenly, the distant echo of hurried footsteps shattered their fragile calm. A messenger burst into the hall, dust trailing like a shroud, eyes wild in the flickering torchlight. "They've struck again," he said, voice breaking with exhaustion. The southern caravan was ambushed, more hostages taken. The enemy's boldness grows. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, his gaze sharpened, the icy steel of command returning with ruthless clarity. Prepare the guards. Increase the patrols beyond the palace walls. No one leaves or enters without my order. He turned toward her, voice dropping to a murmur only she could hear. This war will test everything we believe in and everyone we trust. Her heart hammered, the sudden surge of adrenaline mingling with a grim resolve. What do you see when you look at me, my lord? Ally, threat, or something neither understands yet? He studied her, the flicker between disdain and reluctant respect in his eyes, transforming into something deeper, more dangerous. You are a paradox, he whispered. A flame born of the desert's harshest sands, unpredictable, fierce, yet fragile beneath the surface. He stepped closer, the scent of musk and spice wrapping around them like a cloak. And now you belong here, not as a guest, but as a player in a game your kind cannot yet see. Her pulse quickened, the closeness stirring a storm of emotions too volatile for words. Yet beneath it all, she felt the undeniable pull, an ember of something neither could yet name. Before she could respond, a soft sound drew their attention. From the shadows emerged an elder figure, a servant whose eyes rarely betrayed the burdens of palace life. He bowed deeply, voice trembling. "My lord, there is news from within the house." The Sheikh's expression darkened, the weight of unseen threats pressing down anew. "Speak. The princess, your sister, she has received a visitor. Someone bearing a message wrapped in shadows." The servant glanced at the girl, hesitation thinly veiling his unease. "The visitor's identity is hidden, but their purpose is clear, to unsettle the balance of power." A slow, cruel smile curved the Sheikh's lips. The game grows even more dangerous. The girl's throat tightened. The palace, once a fortress of gold and marble, now smelled of danger. Secrets that could unravel everything at a whisper. Her gaze locked with the Sheikh's, silent but resolute. Together they stood at the crossroads of a dawn stained by treachery and hope. Then, as a distant thunder rolled across the desert, the sound of shattering glass echoed through the grand hall. A hidden figure lunged from the darkness, a dagger gleaming beneath the chandelier's fractured light, aimed not at the Sheikh, but at the girl. Time slowed. The Sheikh's hand shot out, catching her wrist in a grip of iron, eyes blazing with fierce protectiveness. "Too much trust already," he hissed, voice laced with warning, and something deeper, an unspoken vow. As the attacker vanished into the labyrinth of corridors, a single chilling truth bristled in the air. The greatest betrayal was not outside these walls. It was waiting within the golden cage they both now called home. The tension in the palace was nearly suffocating, as if the very walls held their breath. The shattered glasses' echo still lingered like a whisper of doom. And the stolen moments between the Sheikh and the girl hung suspended, raw and fragile. His grasp on her wrist had been fierce, protective, yet beneath the strength lurked something deeper, an unspoken admission of vulnerability neither dared voice. The attacker's sudden disappearance left a dark shadow trailing behind them, one that promised danger would not simply knock once, but break through every door. She turned her gaze to the Sheikh, heart still hammering, the raw shock mixing with a flicker of trust born from shared peril. His eyes, deep pools reflecting the starless desert sky, softened for a moment before hardening again, wrapped tightly in the armor of command. "We are not safe, not even within these walls," he said quietly, the weight of his words settling over them like an oppressive storm. "And now, your life is tethered irrevocably to mine." Every syllable carried the weight of unyielding authority, yet beneath it trembled the fragile thread of something like promise. She nodded, lips pressed thin, aware of the path they had unwittingly chosen, one where trust was a weapon as much as a shield. The grand hall, once roaring with power and gold, now felt like a cage closing tighter, with every secret uncovered, every whispered threat. The servants hurried past, their shadows fleeting like the rumors that now chased them relentlessly. The Sheikh's hand remained steady on her wrist, guiding her through a maze of corridors that seemed darker, their ancient stones echoing stories of betrayal and allegiance. Each step sounded like a countdown to a reckoning, neither secluded chamber, lined with velvet and gold. He finally released her with a deliberate gentleness that belied the storm raging behind his eyes. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across their faces, a silent battlefield where pride and need clashed fiercely. "You survived the fire outside these gates," he murmured, voice low and rough. "But the flames within this palace burn far hotter. You must be ready." Her breath caught, the weight of fate settling squarely on her slender shoulders. "I have faced darkness before," she replied, steady despite the tremor beneath. "And I will face it again, for you, if need be." At that confession, something invisible shifted between them, a fragile truce, or perhaps the first fragile seed of something far more dangerous than alliance or duty. Before he could reply, the soft hiss of silk announced the arrival of the palace steward, his face pale beneath the weight of urgent news. "My lord, there is word from the eastern border. The enemy's shadow grows longer. Their spies infiltrate our ranks. A traitor walks among us." The Sheikh's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening until the sharp lines of his face seemed carved from stone. "Who?" he demanded, voice an edge of steel. The steward hesitated. then offered a name, heavy with poison. It is one you trust deeply. The girl's pulse quickened. The air seemed to thicken, pressing down like the desert heat at noon. She could almost taste the bitterness of betrayal before it was spoken aloud. The Sheikh's gaze snapped to her, searching, piercing, as if seeking answers hidden in the flicker of her eyes. For all her courage, a flash of doubt flickered like a candle fighting the wind. "We will unravel this deceit," he said tightly, voice dropping to near a whisper. "But no secret stays buried forever." As the night deepened, they convened with the council once again, voices hushed, eyes sharp, tensions barely contained. The girl felt every gaze like a blade, every whispered suspicion a chisel carving away at her resolve. But the Sheikh stood unyielding, his presence a bulwark against the tide of doubt. Every word he spoke carried the weight of his empire, every glance toward her an unspoken command, and a guarded acknowledgement. The council's murmurs swelled like desert windstorms outside their sealed chamber. But inside, the fragile alliance was attempting to take root amid the ruins of trust. Later, alone in the sweeping solitude of the terrace, the Sheikh spoke softly, the cool night breeze rippling his silks. "Your secret, it's not just a shadow in your past. It's a blade poised to cut through everything I have built." She looked out over the vast expanse of desert, moonlight painting her silhouette with silver and shadow. "Then we fight together or fall apart." He closed the distance between them, the air thick with unspoken truths and dangerous promise. "I want to believe that, but in this palace, belief is a luxury we rarely afford." A silence stretched between them. No need for words as the desert's quiet enveloped their fragile truce. Yet even as they shared this moment, the palace hummed with unrest. Suddenly, a tremor shook the ground, a distant explosion that set lanterns quivering and dust falling like mournful rain. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, reflecting flames no one else could yet see. "They have begun the siege." She swallowed hard, heart pounding with the force of a tempest rising from the sands. "Stand with me," he said, voice barely more than a breath, "or step aside and watch everything burn." And then, in the deepest shadows of the palace's labyrinthine halls, a whispered word slipped through the night, a name neither of them expected, but one that would unravel loyalties and ignite betrayals more devastating than any battle. The Sheikh's gaze clenched tight, his voice steel sharpening around the forbidden truth. "No one is safe, not even those closest to us." Outside, the desert wind howled with secrets. Inside, the palace waited for its reckoning. The silence that had settled over the palace was shattered only by the distant crash of footsteps, fading into shadowed corridors. Beneath the cold silver moonlight, the billionaire Sheikh stood motionless by the terrace, a solitary silhouette carved against the vast, undulating dunes. His gaze was a tempest held prisoner, eyes dark and unresolved, reflecting battles both without and within. She approached quietly, the hem of her silk gown whispering secrets to the marble beneath. Her presence was a fragile defiance, a flame flickering against the suffocating weight of the palace's opulence, and the even heavier burden of fate. "They press harder," she murmured, eyes fixed on the horizon where the faint glow of fires threatened the desert's endless calm. The attacks, the betrayals, the walls are crumbling, even within. He turned slowly, the scent of oud and musk enveloping them like a shield against unseen enemies. Every alliance forged on necessity is a double-edged sword, he said, voice gravelly but steady. Trust is a rare jewel. I grant it sparingly, and when betrayed, I strike without mercy. Her eyes searched his, fierce yet brittle. And what of the trust between us? Is that yet another gamble to be lost in this game? For an agonizing breath, the emperor of this gilded cage faltered, his facade cracking just enough to reveal a shadow of vulnerability. Then he straightened, the cold steel of command overtaking the flicker of softness. You do not understand the cost of this world. It devours those who falter. His words were sharp, but beneath the surface they carried an unspoken plea to rise beyond their differences, to become something stronger, something unbreakable. The desert teaches harsh truths, she replied quietly. But I have learned to bend without breaking, and I will stand, not merely beside you, but with you, against every storm. A tense silence stretched between them, charged with promises neither dared voice aloud. The golden palace walls seemed suddenly smaller, closing in as if warning them of the perilous dance ahead. Suddenly, the doors burst open. The steward entered swiftly, his face pale beneath the kingdom's glitter and shadows. "My lord," he gasped, "the eastern borders are aflame. More caravans have been raided, our resources diminishing faster than we can replenish." The sheikh's eyes narrowed, every line in his face sharpening like blades drawn against an invisible foe. "And our spies, what news from within?" The steward's gaze flickered to the girl, hesitation steeped in years of palace intrigue, heavy in his eyes. "There are whispers of a traitor close to you, sire. A shadow moving behind every door, waiting." Her breath hitched. The palace's opulent splendor now felt like a labyrinth of knives. Gaze, the fire rekindling, fierce and resolute. "Then let the betrayals come. I will face them without surrender." Late into the night, they convened with the shadowed council beneath vaulted ceilings, draped in rich brocades, voices low but saturated with venomous suspicion. The girl felt each glance slice through her, a gauntlet of doubt and disdain. Yet the sheikh's unwavering defense was a fortress around her. Once the court adjourned, the quiet of his private chambers embraced them like a fragile truce. The flicker of candlelight caressed their faces, highlighting scars made of pride, pain, and unspoken truths. "You hide a storm within," he murmured, tracing the edge of her jaw with a finger trembling with conflicted desire. "One that could drown or illuminate us both." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, the haunted echoes of a past she was forced to keep buried. "Let the storm come. I am no longer the girl who begged for crumbs. I am the woman who will carve her destiny even from the harshest sand." He pulled her close, his breath warm, the fortress of his power melting into vulnerability. "Together, we will face whatever darkness tries to divide us." Before she could answer, a chill wind swept through the room as a messenger arrived, eyes wild, cloak torn, bearing the latest cruel whisper of war. "The palace gates were sabotaged," the man rasped. "An attempt on your life, my lord. The dagger was meant for the girl. The Sheikh's grip on the girl's wrist tightened, his voice low, fierce. The poison runs deeper than we feared. Their eyes locked, heartbeats sinking in the suffocating silence. Outside, the desert held its breath as a storm more ruthless than sand approached. One born not of nature's fury, but of treachery and shattered trust. And in the shadows, where no light dared linger, a name was whispered, a name destined to ignite the ruin or salvation of the Sheikh's empire. And the fragile bond between two souls caught in the relentless tide of destiny. The moon's silver glow seeped through the high windows, casting long shadows that danced like whispers across the marble floors. The palace, once a refuge of order and opulence, felt frail, its golden walls now mere barriers against an encroaching storm. The weight of unseen dangers pressed relentlessly, tightening on every breath and step. The billionaire sheikh stood by the terrace, his silhouette rigid against the desert's vast expanse. His eyes, dark and restless, searched the horizon where the faint flicker of fiery embers threatened silence. The air carried the distant scent of smoke, mingled with the richer fragrance of oud and jasmine that lingered stubbornly in the halls. "I fear we are running out of time," he murmured, the gravel in his voice betraying a rare vulnerability. She appeared beside him, the soft rustle of her silk gown barely disturbing the tense stillness. Her gaze followed his, unwavering despite the tempest brewing both outside and within the palace walls. "They grow bolder," she said, voice low but fierce. "The raids, the betrayals, this is no mere war of swords. It is a war of shadows and secrets." His jaw clenched as the first star of night shimmered, a distant witness to the unfolding peril. Trust is the rarest commodity in this palace, and betrayal wears many faces. She met his eyes with a fire that wavered between defiance and something deeper, raw hope or desperate recklessness, he could not yet tell. "Then let us be the exception," she whispered, stepping closer so the warmth of her breath brushed his skin. "For whatever storm comes, we stand or fall together." A flicker of emotion passed through his gaze, something like acknowledgement, wrapped swiftly in cold command. "We cannot afford weakness. The council watches. Our enemies lurk even among those sworn to protect us." The memory of the dagger's gleam haunted him still, the cruel attempt on her life, shadows closing in tighter than ever. The palace was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield where every smile hid a threat. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open. The steward moved swiftly through the hall, urgency tightening his pale features. "My lord, there's word from the southern border. More caravans have been attacked. Supplies taken. Hostages too," he panted, the weight of the news settling like sand suffocating a flame. The sheikh's eyes darkened to obsidian, resolve hardening every line of his face. "Prepare the guards. Double the patrols. No one moves without my express command." He turned to the girl, the scent of musk heavy between them. "This war will strip us to our very bones." Her fingers curled into fists to steady the tempest in her chest. "And yet, I am ready to be torn apart if it means standing beside you." He studied her for a long moment, the paradox she embodied, defiant yet vulnerable, a flame fiercely burning beneath tattered silks. "A player in a game few survive," he murmured. "But you need not face it alone." Their silence was shattered by a faint, hurried knock. A young messenger appeared, breathless. "My lord," he gasped. "There is news from within the palace. A visitor cloaked in shadows came to the princess. Their message, an omen darker than the desert night." The sheikh's lips pressed into a thin line. "Show me." The girl's gaze flicked toward him, shadows crossing her features. Was this the moment that would unravel all they had fought to forge? "They speak of a traitor," the messenger continued, voice trembling. "One moving unseen, poised to strike from within. A name whispered, one that means ruin." The air thickened, as if the palace itself held its breath. The sheikh's gaze locked onto hers, piercing, searching for truths hidden behind defiant eyes. "You bear secrets," he stated, voice low and heavy with the weight of command and trust. "Secrets that could save or shatter everything." A shiver traced her spine, yet she met his stare, steady. "Then let us wield them like blades." For a moment, the world narrowed to that charged space, the scent of perfumed silk, the distant roar of desert winds, the unspoken promises and threats binding them tighter than chains. But before the fragile truce could fully take root, a sudden explosion rocked the palace walls. Dust fell like morning rain. Lanterns flickered uncertainly, and the distant cries of alarm rose sharp and clear. The sheikh's eyes flared with raw fire, the eternal battle tempered by personal stakes now raging. He grasped her hand, voice cutting through the chaos. "Prepare yourself. They have begun the siege." Her breath caught, the pounding in her chest fierce as a war drum. "And what of those we trust? Are they allies or enemies cloaked in familiar faces?" His grip tightened, shadows flickering behind his gaze. "In this house, the walls whisper treachery. And the dagger may come not from the desert's edge, but from the hands closest to ours." Silence fell between them, heavy, charged, as if the very air held the secret that would tear their world apart. Then, like a final breath before the storm, a name slipped from the darkness, soft, searing, unforgettable. The Shah's empire, their fragile bond, and their very lives now hung precariously on that whispered truth. The stillness that had briefly settled after the explosion was shattered by a distant, insistent clamor echoing through the palace corridors. The billionaire Sheikh's jaw clenched as he straightened beneath the weight of the threat. The silence now replaced by the hurried footsteps of messengers and the uneasy rustle of uneasy servants. His eyes, dark and uncompromising, swept across the vast terrace where shadows danced beneath the moon's cold gaze. Behind him stood the woman who had once begged for mercy, now draped in silk, her fire undimmed despite the peril closing in. "We stand on the edge of ruin," he said, voice low, but charged with the unyielding command that told the court he was still the master of this golden labyrinth. "The siege has begun. Every hour the enemy presses closer, seeking to splinter our resolve." Her eyes held a fierce determination, tempered by the scars of survival, etched into her skin and soul. They believe they can break us with fear and blood, but they forget the desert's fiercest storms forge the strongest souls. A shiver of wind stirred the heavy silk curtains, carrying the scent of jasmine, fading into the sharp tang of smoke from the burning borders. The palace, once a sanctuary of cold luxury, now bore the weight of imminent war. Suddenly, the heavy doors groaned open, and the steward entered, breathless, his face drawn tight with grave news. "My lord, there are reports from the outer guards. An explosion near the northern gate breached the wall. Enemies have infiltrated. We must act swiftly." The Sheikh's eyes flashed steel. "Summon the guards. Seal every corridor. No one enters or leaves without my command. Prepare the palace for battle." She stepped closer. The vulnerability that had softened the edges of their growing alliance now hardened by necessity. "Your people will fight for you, my lord. But who will protect us from those who wear our faces in the shadows?" A moment of silence hung heavy between them. The desert, night outside, as relentless as the storms within the walls. His gaze flickered, betraying the loneliness that no power could banish. "They are among us," he admitted quietly. "Traitors with smiles carved from ice. Trust is a blade I wield with caution, but even I can be cut." She reached for his hand, the contact faint yet electric, a silent vow binding them in defiance. "Then we will stand together, your blade and my shield." The palace halls seemed to close in, whispers swirling like venom. The council had fractured into factions, some silently welcoming the chaos, others clinging desperately to shattered loyalties. The princess's visitor had left ripples, and the whispered name, one neither dared speak aloud, hung like a guillotine over their heads. Later, beneath the towering archways, lined with intricate mosaics and under a sky streaked with restless stars, the sheikh and the girl faced one another. The weight of secrets and unsaid truths pressed like the desert sun at noon. "You hide within you a tempest," he said, voice low and weighted with urgency. "One that could either cleanse or destroy all you touch." Her jaw tightened. Her eyes, pools of defiance and pain, met his without wavering. "Then let the desert winds carry our storm. I am no longer the girl who begged for scraps. I am the woman who will carve a future from these sands." Their fragile alliance simmered between them, more than duty, yet less than trust, when suddenly a harsh cry split the night. From the shadows swept a figure cloaked in midnight, barely a silhouette against the palace's gleam. A blade flashed under the moonlight, its arc swift and deadly, aimed not at the sheikh this time, but at her. Time fractured. The world slowed. The sheikh's hand lashed out, seizing her wrist in an iron grip. His eyes blazed with fierce protectiveness, the rage of 1,000 sandstorms locked in his gaze. "Too much faith placed too soon," he hissed, voice raw with warning, and something fiercer. An unspoken reckoning. The assassin vanished into the twisting corridors as swiftly as they had come, leaving behind an electric silence that hummed with the promise of deeper betrayal. She stared at the sheikh, pulse hammering beneath silk, a fusion of fear and the strange comfort that only his strength could bring. "We are Besieged on all fronts, he murmured as he released her hand, voice heavy with the solitude of command. Not just by enemies beyond these walls, but by ghosts inside. Her breath caught, the fragile hope trembling like a candle in a desert gale. Then we forge our own path between treachery and salvation. Before the night's shadows could reclaim their silence, a subtle shift rippled through the palace chambers. A messenger's hurried steps, a whispered name rubbing against the walls like a curse. That name, the one that would unravel loyalties, the one that could shatter the empire. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, the flicker of vulnerability vanishing beneath a mask of unbreakable will. "No one is as they seem," he declared, voice slicing through the thickening night. "And the greatest dagger lies hidden, where the heart should reside." Outside, the desert held its breath. Inside, two souls stood intertwined, caught between love, betrayal, and a secret that threatened to consume them all. The first light of dawn stretched its golden fingers across the emirate, spilling warmth over the endless dunes and bathing the palace in a soft, forgiving glow. Inside the silent halls, where turmoil had reigned for countless nights, a calm settled as if the very air exhaled relief. The billionaire Sheikh stood on the terrace, the weight of the past weeks etched into the sharp lines of his face. Yet something had softened, the icy sheen in his eyes now replaced by a quiet resolve. Beside him, the woman who had once begged at his gates now stood tall, her presence a testament to hardship overcome and courage immortalized. The silk of her dress fluttered gently in the morning breeze, carrying the scent of jasmine and promise. "Tomorrow, the council will meet once again," he said, voice steady, but tinged with something warmer. "But today, the battle for our souls has already been won." His gaze found hers, lingering with unspoken gratitude and a rare vulnerability. She met his eyes without hesitation. "We have walked through fire, and yet here we stand, scarred, yes, but unbroken." The palace, once a fortress shadowed by betrayal and secrets, now shimmered with a fragile light of reconciliation. The halls that had echoed with whispered threats now held a silence pregnant with newfound possibility. In the days that followed, the truth unraveled, one tethered not to treacheries whispered in darkened chambers, but to the strength of unity forged through pain. The traitor, once concealed behind a mask of loyalty, was revealed not with a harsh clang, but with the gentle unraveling of evidence assembled by the girl's keen insight and the Sheikh's unwavering justice. When the council convened, eyes that had watched with suspicion softened, replaced by respect for the woman who had dared to challenge the entrenched power and the man who had chosen redemption over pride. Together, they dismantled the fractures within their ranks, building bridges that had once seemed impossible in the shifting sands of old grudges. The Sheikh's sister, whose presence had once stirred whispers of uncertainty and danger, stood among them now as an ally, her past doubts replaced by trust born from shared trials. The palace's heart pulsed stronger, not from gold or silk, but from the beating of loyal souls bound by honesty and purpose. That night, beneath a sky splattered with distant starlight, the Sheikh and the woman, now no longer merely a shadow at the gate, but his equal partner, sat side by side on the terrace, where their journey had transformed. The desert's cool breath mingled with the warmth radiating between them. A promise of peace carved from relentless storms. He reached for her hand, rough fingers intertwining with hers, a touch both tender and certain. "You have changed more than this palace," he whispered. "You have changed me." She smiled, a slow, radiant light that dissolved years of loneliness and guarded pride. "And you taught me that even empires built on power need love to endure." As dawn crept higher, the palace seemed to breathe easier, its walls no longer prisons, but sanctuaries. The gardens bloomed with fragrant flowers, vibrant and alive, symbols of renewal in a world that had once teetered on the edge of ruin. Children's laughter echoed faintly through the courtyards, a sound once foreign, but now perfectly at home. The future stretched before them like the unending desert sky, vast, unpredictable, but theirs to carve together. The sheikh turned, pulling her closer beneath the cascading shadows of date palms and moonlight fading into day. Their eyes met, the unspoken vow between them clear and unbreakable. "I promise you this," he said, his voice steady as the desert wind. "We will face whatever comes, not as ruler and subject, but as partners, as family." She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Strong, steady, and no longer alone. Together she breathed simply, and there, in the heart of the newfound calm, beneath the ever-watching stars slipping quietly away, two souls once worlds apart sealed a bond forged in fire and tempered by love. The billionaire sheikh and his unexpected bride stepped forward, not into shadows, but into a dawn bright with hope and the endless possibilities of a future earned. The palace gates stood open, welcoming the winds of change, carrying with them the echoes of a love resilient, a kingdom reborn, and a promise that no secrets, no betrayals could ever shatter again.